May I have your attention, please? We need silence in the room, please. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, respected professors, fellow researchers, and dear participants. This is Nabila Maruf, Faculty Department of Economics, School of Business and Entrepreneurship, Independent University, Bangladesh. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the PhD Colloquium and Paper Producing Workshop organized by Icebtm 2025. To commence this session, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Mohammad Mamun Habib, the General Chair of Icebtm 2025. He has been a PhD supervisor of many students, and we are pretty sure many scholars sitting here has gotten their PhDs under him. Before handing over the session to him, I would also like to acknowledge our esteemed facilitators. We have distinguished scholars who are experienced PhD supervisors. First, we have Professor Dr. Raja Rasia from University of Malaya, Malaysia. Then we have Professor Dr. Jonathan Liu from International Business School, Manchester, UK. And finally, we have Professor Dr. Maniam Kalyanan from University of Nottingham, Malaysia. Now I request Professor Dr. Mohammad Mamun Habib, our session chair, to kindly take the floor and conduct today's session.
Hello, can you hear me? Dear participants, can you hear me? I could not hear you. Can you hear me? Is it a very good lunch? Now this is a time for you. This is a PhD colloquium. We believe that there is a lot of participants here. Those are the undergraduate level student, master's level student, MBA student. Those have the intuition to pursue the PhD in near future. So we are opening this session for those, if you're interested to pursue the PhD in near future, so get some idea. And when you like to do the PhD, paper producing is a part of the PhD. So that's why we like to discuss about these two things together. We believe that there is a few professors are here. Those are already involved, the PhD supervision, PhD external examiner. So we believe that our discussion will help you how we can also make sure that better supervision. Before going to start our presentation, I'd like to mention a few things here. Our School of Business Entrepreneurship, Independent University, Bangladesh, we have one PhD committee. We are working for the PhD program. We are planning, if you get the approval from the University Grants Commission near future, hopefully we are going to launch a PhD program. So that's why this kind of session would add the values in that sense. So thank you so much. Today you can see with me, I'm so honored that with me Professor Dr. Jonathan Liu, Professor Dr. Raja Rasia, Professor Dr. Maniam Kalyanan. So all our professors are the highly accomplished PhD supervisor. So today we like to know their opinion, how we can start the PhD, how we can get the idea for the PhD, how we can think that the process of the PhD proposal, how we can think the PhD dissertation structure, and how we can think the quality of the PhD as well as the paper production from the PhD. So once a time, I request you all the participants, we need your attention and silence mode. Distinguished professors, they are going to start their discussion. We need your full cooperation. Okay. So first of all, you can start in this way. We are going to share the one slide with you, so you can get some idea. You can get some idea about the PhD structure, other things. In the meantime, we will ask one by one. What is their observation? What is the input? How they can add the values to our participants? If you look very carefully, the first on the PhD proposal, we mentioned a few key things. When you design the PhD proposal, that you have to think and for the clear research question. So that means you have to think that your problem. We always mention that there are 4 things that are correlated. Statement of problem, research question, research objectives, or research hypothesis. But problem is that it's very difficult to identify the research question. It is very difficult to get the problem. So that's why we say that we need the clear research question. Then we have to come up with the issue is that how we can make sure the significance of these topics, of this problem. And then we have to start to think our existing literature review. So we have to need the existing literature review to link with our existence, our next target PhD proposal. And finally, we need the potential supervisor. I believe those are here today, they are very accomplished PhD supervisor. And I believe in this room, a lot of students, also they are familiar with the PhD students, and some of them also the PhD scholars of them. So I like to start by this first one, PhD proposal, that I like to know their opinion one by one. So we like to start, Professor Rajarashia. So how about your opinion about about this research question, significance of the study, existing literature review, and potential supervisor? Please, Professor Rajarashia.
Thank you, Professor Mamun. I'm not sure if I followed the line of conventional PhD supervision. I myself have taught this course, Advanced Research Methodology for PhD students, over, I think, more than 15 years. And I used to teach at that time for the Faculty of Business and Economics as well as Asia-Europe Institute. The problem with that was to teach these guys, I think you need smaller classes. Because I had more than 60 students at a time, I really didn't like that. So now I've managed to remove the Faculty of Business and Economics. Now we have in Asia-Europe Institute lots of business students, lots of economic students, but of course not exceeding 20 per class. Now coming back to this point, I feel the time I did my PhD from 89 to 92, in fact I finished in 2.5 years, at that time we didn't have that much, no knowledge, no mention of AI. And there was no way I felt I could do a profound literature review that goes as a review article, because however much I would have known, there's no way I could have known more than people with that sort of tacit knowledge. And therefore I felt this should come at the end. But today I see people doing the literature review, immediately publishing, and that may explain also why. If you look at Research Policy, one of the leading technology journals, they no longer mention Schumpeter. Schumpeter is no longer there in defining innovation. Classics are missed. They are going for the latest 5-year articles. I somehow feel that it tends to bring old wine in new bottles, not even the way the old wine was prepared. Now, that's why I brought this up. And I just wanted to speak on one slide. And in that one slide was, I grade students in different ways. Interestingly, against my own wish, for the last 10 years, I've been supervising more than 50 active students at a time. More than 50 and more than 70 have graduated. I found a way to supervise them in different structures. But what I do here is, I see talent that would require, say, an examiner from UC Berkeley or Harvard. I have actually got examiners like that, and they actually promote the students subsequently. And I also found students, to me, meet the criteria of being a PhD student, and they end up doing PhDs that, to me, just meets the grade. And in my understanding, there's no way I would have exposed them to an examiner who would be tough on them. Now, coming back to this, when I start, you were mentioning, absolutely, I felt your 35 slides were good enough for every one of them to know. Not for me to intervene and say this is right or wrong. Your problem statement, why it should be interesting, what will be the scientific contribution towards that, what will be the societal impact with that, and whether it's doable. All that need to be in your problem statement. So I don't want to take the entire thing. I'll come back later. Pass the cue to the next in the order.
Hello, good afternoon. Okay. I think the biggest challenge is to actually try and speak after lunch. Okay. So I'm going to pose a question just to check that the audience are still awake. Okay. How many of you are considering or actually doing a PhD? Can I have a raise of hands? Yeah.
If you have
Good.
any intention to pursue the PhD in your future, please raise your hand.
Good.
Professor
Excellent.
Jonathan would like to know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good number.
Thank you very much. So this basically indicates to me how much more you're going to be tortured over the next 5 years. Okay? I would share with you a very simple thing about just developing the research question. That is really the key. And how you achieve that is not in your head, but actually reading. Some of the things that a lot of PhD students, or even when you're writing a proposal, is you have to find the research question. And the research question is easily found if you actually read works done by other learned academics. Because somewhere in there, they will tell you why that is an important question. And usually, it's because we don't have an answer. So your role in doing a proposal is to actually do a literature review, hopefully a systematic one, followed with actually identifying the gaps, i.e., what do we not know about a particular topic area, and then to focus on that and to develop a research question. Okay? So I'll concede now to.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, good afternoon. All right, let me just start by telling this. I'm Maniam from Malaysia, by the way. And Prof. Rajarasa was the dean when I did my PhD in University Malaya. So my boss is sitting there. All right. Let me just start by telling PhD is not rocket science. Anyone can do it, right? It is a journey, and proposal is actually a starting point. Eventually, proposal will change, the contents will change. The whole purpose of us preparing proposal is to get the right supervisor who will be guiding us next 3, 4, 5 years, right? As mentioned by all of us here, there is no one size fits all, right? Where you start. I tell my students, I graduated about 20 students so far. I have about 10 active students with me now. I tell them always start with literature review. Read papers, what people have achieved, what else can be done. That is where you find a research gap. From the research gap, you formulate your problem statement, then comes your research questions, research objectives, and they're not carved on the stone, yeah? Because as you progress in your own journey, you will come back, revisit your problem statement, you will edit, you will change, because this process of editing, changing happens throughout your journey until you go to your Viva examination. So the point is, number one, is not rocket science. Number two, there is no one size fits all. Number three, the purpose of proposal is to start your journey, knowing the gap in the literature, and how to know that. I tell my students, best practice is start with literature review. Right? Let me just stop here and then come back to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let us go to our next level. That is the outline of the PhD dissertation. University to university, country to country, it has a variation. But more or less the main structure is same. The few universities, they are using the 5 chapters, few universities, they use the 6 chapter. Even the section or subsection is also the subject interpretation. So we are just showing the one format, but I again request you, don't think that we have to use it. It is on kind of just guideline for you. It could be revised based on the university, based on the country. If you look very carefully, we mentioned here introduction, a journalist to the study. Basically, we call it this introduction. So this is our chapter 1, introduction. Under the chapter 1, there is a few subsection. You can see this one. You know, it is not that necessary all subsection you have to cover. But there are a few subsections that are very important for you and definitely you have to touch. Just few minutes before I mentioned there are 4 things that are correlated. Statement of problem, research question, research objectives, and research hypothesis. Very simple thing is that you can finish your PhD, but when you are coming to the final stage, final defense, when they're asking you, can you relate your findings with your research problem, then they cannot do this connection. So there is a very interesting thing is that they finish their PhD, 3 years, 4 years journey, but still they cannot connect their findings with the research problem. So you know that nowadays when I supervise a PhD student, I always mention these things that you have to know what is your outcome. You have to connect these four things with the research findings. So if you can connect these four things with the research findings, that's all. You can finish your PhD. But it's a very long journey. So keep in mind, you can see here, we have to mention the research objective here. You have to mention your statement of problems here. You have to mention significance and other things here. Chapter 2, literature review. I think you already noticed our three speakers, they already mentioned. Literature review is a very fundamental issue for any kind of PhD. I believe that in this room, I have a few PhD students, they already finished the PhD under my supervision. Then I remember that when first day I met with them, I mentioned, you have to collect the 50 papers and you have to read the papers. And I provide the one structure, the Excel file, how they can come up the summary of this one. And then after the 50 papers review, you have to come back and then we'll start again. This is the transition period. Maybe some of the students, they will not come back. And some of the students, they think it's very difficult to do the PhD. But remember, this is a very important literature review. So this is a literature review. We'll talk about this one later on. Then you see the chapter 3 research framework. If you have a conceptual framework, definitely it's a very important chapter. And you should have the conceptual framework. You know, when you supervise the USA, that time the PhD, and if you supervise our Asian country, a little bit different. I would say that Asian country PhD is easy to get rather than in the USA. USA, they're thinking that basic research, you have to produce a model and you have to think that how can you apply this model. But our Asian country, it's okay, revise the model, you can add the model, reposition the theory, no problem, you can accept. You know, recently, I just, the last 2 weeks before, I was the one external examiner, the one PhD in Putra Business School. I was surprised to see the quality of the PhD. I didn't mention anything. I give the minor correction because it's my responsibility to give the pass. But I understood that the quality is not up to the standard. So I like to request those who do the PhD in the near future, you have to keep in mind, PhD, you can finish your PhD, but question is the quality of the PhD. Remember one thing, that by the PhD, you can enter in the research world. By the PhD, you can start your research. And the whole world, they have to know you have done your PhD. It is not like that the requirement, the 2 publications we have done, finish the PhD. No. It is the starting of the research. So that's why it's very important, the conceptual model, conceptual framework here. Chapter 4, research methodology. And chapter 5, presentation of data and critical discussion results. Here, basically, we have to apply that our descriptive analysis, inferential analysis, hypothesis testing here. And the chapter 6, summary, conclusion, recommendation. And from there, we have to go to the bibliography, and then finally the appendix. This is a more or less this structure. This is the PhD structure all over the world, but there is some adjustment based on the country. And now, let us start in this way. We got the idea, but how we can get the idea to start the research? How we can select your topics? How we can select the title? How we can get the in-depth thinking that where we can start, from where we can start? You know that this is the way that you can start from the Google is a very easy way. You have to write, you target the HRM, human resource management, write down the HRM management contemporary issues. I would like to request the dear participants, can you hear us? Dear participants, can you hear us? I am requesting our organizing committee, conference committee, you have to move forward, please. Make sure that everybody have to be silent mood at this stage. This is a very important discussion. Is the recording is there, is the live is there. So if you are making the sound, your sound also going there. You are taking the food, your food is also the live. So make sure that you have to finish your lunch and you have to join with us. So what I said here, that this is starting point of Google. Then you have to think the Google Scholar, ResearchGate, academy.edu. You can go to the different way, but it's a starting point. So let us start in this way. HRM practices contemporary issues. You can check. Maybe you can get something. And based on that, you have to explore the papers. This is starting. Explore the papers. And then when you go to this is the other option you can think. If you have the Scopus subscription, you can go to the Scopus. If you have the Web of Science subscription, you can go to there. You can explore the papers from there. I personally request you, you have to think of the quality of your source. Literature review based on this one. So better you have to go to the Scopus Index and Web of Science Index papers. And then there is the next option in the online database. You are a very lucky person. I believe there are some few professors here. 30 years before, we could not get this kind of privilege. 30 years before, we could not think this kind of online database. Now it's very easy. You have a username, password. You can just log in there. You can get the access. You can think the Emerald. You can think about the Scopus, Web of Science, EBSCO, IEEE, or other things. So that means you have another option to explore the papers from there. I'm talking about the how can you get the idea. So not, still you didn't get the idea. We are still searching how can you get the idea. And then open access, I think you have a familiar with open access. Again, you are very lucky in this era. Nowadays we have a lot of open access. Intech is the leading open access in the world. There is no other open access. Intech is already the Scopus and Web of Science Index. So from the open access, you can try to explore the papers and you can get some new idea from there. And I believe that you have now papers. So how we can start to review this paper? First of all, you have to check the abstract. Do you like this abstract? Do you like this area? Do you like this topic? Do you like this thinking? If you like it, no problem. Let's move to the conclusion. In the conclusion, you have to check whether they have any findings, whether the authors they mention any kind of limitation, the authors if they mention any kind of recommendation, suggestion, the authors if they mention any kind of further study, their further study, their limitation, the starting of your PhD research. So this is a very critical point that you have to stop here, that how we can start. So now I'd like to hand over the mic to our facilitators. We like to go one by one. What I just mentioned, how can you get the idea? So you can also share your opinion. Professor Rajarashi.
Thank you, Professor Mamun. I'd like to mention one specific example, given that he's already given the broad aspect of what is expected in sequence terms. A problem can arise, and this is my experience. In fact, it happened when I was doing my master's. Promoted for a PhD, I didn't take it. I was in a firm, the way the Sloan School of Management runs businesses, where 50% of the time the student is in the firm. Now, I was in Intel, Penang branch, I was in AMD, Penang branch, I was also in Hitachi. There was an obsession for just in time. Because at that time, 1985 to 1986, Malaysia's electronics industry was gripped by a crisis, cyclical crisis. Inventory prices just crashed, and therefore they were worthless in that sense. How do you then look at a balance sheet? Inventories are no longer assets, they become liabilities. So in that sort of context, the pioneering, even though the Toyota did that much earlier, the way Schonberger, who was there guiding these guys, was to see how they can eliminate things in such a way they remain agile, flexible, they can step up production, step down production, which is what I saw in the firm. So my issue of doing a study didn't start from reading the literature. What's in the firm? Now, speaking about that, then you go reading firm. You don't, reading the literature, you would not at that time have AI to tell you in this area where the publications are, which we can do it now easily. But it wasn't there at that time. When we had just started, email communication just started bare. Netscape was there at that time. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that was not even something that told me everything about just in time. At that time, you had this conveyor belt started by Henry Ford. Honda still uses that as the main mode of production organization. Hitachi, I visited that a number of times in Nagoya. You'll see all sorts of models on the same line because they are very flexible. They no longer use the Kanban system because it's really out-fashioned. They use computer control systems where they track demand very quickly, fed into, and then how much they should produce of one model and so on. I saw many of these different things. So my problem of statement starts that way. Then I go and from there extract questions. Then I end up reading the literature. Now it's easy. You can put that on. AI will give you what literature you should read. And then you look for gaps there. What else you can do? Of course, in my opinion, if I didn't have a solution that's already there, it's not worth doing that study, unless you want to extend that body of literature to something else, creating new parts of innovation. So, but obviously, you're going to find all sorts of gaps, and therefore, you can do it that way too. I'm giving just an experience where you don't have to straight away jump into a set of books and then find the problem.
Right, thank you very much. I will continue with my trend of asking you questions just to check you're still awake, and in some cases, maybe even alive. Okay? Sorry, that's English humor. Okay? You are allowed to laugh. Okay? My question to you is, those of you that have either embarked on a PhD program or are drafting up a proposal, how many of you have actually looked at other people's completed or successfully completed PhD thesis? Can you raise your hands? Okay. So the first thing you now need to do is when you get back, get onto Google and look for PhD thesis that has already been completed. Okay? Do not try to invent the wheel. And I would agree with you. Okay? Sometimes it's very difficult to find the problem if you can't see it. Okay? I'll give you an example of some of the work that I've done on the research side. I was growing up as a kid in Malaysia. Age 14, I started to notice that there were girls in my school. Okay? There were sixth formers. And I observed some very funny behavior. Okay? That boys was going to the toilets on their own, but girls were going in pairs or in groups, usually laughing, holding hands. Okay? So there I am, 14 years old. Who do I ask to explain this? I thought about it, and I thought I better not say anything. Until I went to study in the UK, and I did psychology and sociology. And I learned, and I asked my professor, okay? I said, I'm a bit embarrassed, but I cannot understand this. And he talked about social norms and how group behavior was. And that was an eye-opener for me. And I produced my first paper on how Asian students were behaving in social circles, okay? So again, I would agree, with what Dr. Rajan has said, is that you can work it out on something that you see and you can't explain, okay? Then that's the task you could do. And maybe it's from reading literature, or in my case, asking my professors. Okay?
Thank you, Jonathan. Just to recap, the question is, how do we identify the research topic or the discipline? One important observation over the years, you are the owner of your topic, you are the owner of your research. Good to do something that you like, you're passionate about it, yeah? Many students come to me personally, they say, sir, I want to do PhD, but I do not know what to do. So I always tell them, go and explore, go and observe, talk to people, attend conferences, go for a PhD colloquium to get an idea. Because unless otherwise you're a scholarship holder. Like I remember back in 2003, I was a government scholar. Government gave me a topic to do. Because I'm a scholarship holder, I have no choice, topic was given to me, and I developed my PhD proposal from topic. And I observe also many of my fellow academics back in Malaysia and around the world, right? Most of us, good about 70-80%, we tend to explore from the PhD work. We tend to become a more research scholar in that area over the years. So it's good to have ownership of the research discipline topic that you want to do, which is very, very critical. So my advice to students will be, it's okay to take some time, right? Explore the field out there, as mentioned by Prof. Mamun just now. Many good papers will have, at the end of the paper, limitation of the research. That is your starting point. Because there's a limitation, there's always room for improvement, right? You can read, like Jonathan said, sample thesis. ProQuest can give you many good completed theses. Just have a look on these theses. Again, go and see their limitation section, what they've found as limitations. You can start that as your starting point. Important point is, you are the owner of your thesis. You must like what you do. Otherwise, struggle will be there. And I've seen some cases in the past, they couldn't finish the topic because that is not what they like to do, right? So my advice is, observe, read, talk to people, and choose a topic or discipline and stick to it. That is going to be your probably next 15, 20 years of research. And remember, yeah, one important point is, PhD is not end of research. PhD is actually starting point of your research. You're becoming an independent researcher after PhD. PhD give you the confidence. Wow, I've done my PhD. Now I can do more research. I can attend more conference, publish more papers. So have that ownership of the research. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to add the one thing that Dr. Maniam already raised this issue. You know, I get this kind of PhD scholars nowadays. They were working in the industry for a long time, 20 years, 15 years. Now they like to do the PhD. And the very interesting thing is that I asked this question, do you know that after doing the PhD, if you come to the academics, your salary will be the 50% of the current salary? Are you sure you like to start the academic characteristics? And then their reply was yes. In terms of the dignity, in terms of the honor, in terms of the acceptance level, they like to come to the academics. So that's why this very interesting thing is that you have to take the ownership. If you could not take the ownership, then this is something that happens even after they finish the PhD, you will not get the accomplishment. Your self-accomplishment will come from your own ownership. Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's move to our second part, that outline of the research publication. Basically, we are not talking about the publication too much because we have a one session, second day after the launch again, meet the journal editors. Basically, we'll talk about this one in the next session, our next day. But keep in mind, as you have to know this one, as you know, during the PhD, it is one of the mandatory everywhere that you have to publish the paper. Some of the universities, they mention that one Scopus Index journal and one peer-reviewed or two peer-reviewed journal. Some of the places they mention that at least 2 papers in the Scopus Index journal. Somewhere they mention Q1, Q2. There are some of the other restrictions as well. So that means the byproduct, this publication will come up. But problem is that what we understood that during the PhD, some of them they're thinking if they finish their PhD means to publish papers, finish the PhD. The question is that do you want to get the 33 out of